These are some of the most disturbing crimes that happen in the Zelda community, and as the video progresses, they go from bizarre to downright disturbing. For 6 years, fans of The Legend of Zelda waited for a sequel to the 2017 release, and with each year passing, it felt like it would never come. But in September 2022, Nintendo finally broke its silence, releasing a trailer that not only revealed the long-awaited title, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but also confirmed its release date as May 12, 2023, and fans across the world couldn't contain their excitement. Some started saving up to buy the game, and others flooded forums, where they dissected the trailer frame by frame, and even came up with theories on the direction they believed the game would take. Now, while the fans waited eagerly for launch day, Amazon delivery subcontractors in Japan were also busy on their end. With just 1 month until the release of the widely anticipated game, a subcontractor in Kanagawa Prefecture hired part-time workers to help with the busy season. Among the new employees was a 21-year-old man who we'll call Gaku. Now, Gaku didn't get the job just for the paycheck. He was a die-hard fan of The Legend of Zelda, and even though he'd waited 6 years like everyone else, he just couldn't wait any longer to get his hands on the game. But the shipment wouldn't arrive until a few days before release, so for weeks, Gaku showed up at work, sorting packages and loading vans while keeping an eye out for the games. And when they finally arrived, he waited for the perfect moment, and when he got the chance, he took a copy of the game and nothing more. Now, a few days later, the supervisor called Gaku's home, as he'd stopped showing up at work, so the supervisor wanted to know what was going on. And Gaku's mother picked up, and when asked where her son was, she said that he was home playing a game. That immediately raised the supervisor's suspicions, and later he confronted Gaku, who admitted that he had, in fact, been playing Tears of Kingdom, essentially confessing to stealing the game from the warehouse since, at the time, both the physical and digital versions of the game were yet to be released. Now, in his words, "I wanted to play it as soon as possible." And he wasn't the only one who shared the sentiment. It was so widespread that the term Zelda holiday started trending online, as Japanese workers planned to take time off the moment the game dropped, just so that they could get immersed and play the long-awaited game to their heart's content. Now, Gaku wasn't even the only one who applied for a part-time delivery job, hoping to get early access to the game. Around the same time he was hired, a 24-year-old man who we'll be calling Shiro also joined the team, and strangely, both men had been hired by the same subcontractor, completely unaware of each other's plans. Unlike Gaku though, who took the job because he couldn't wait to play the game, Shiro came in purely for financial gain. He was what you call a collector, as he had profiles on flea marketplaces like Mercari and Rokuma, where he sold hard-to-find items. This time around, he was gunning for Tears of the Kingdom and other Zelda-related items. And with the products being barely guarded, Shiro was able to walk away with multiple items. And once he got what he came for, he also stopped showing up at work. Now, employee theft wasn't uncommon in Japanese subcontractor warehouses. So when the supervisor noticed Shiro's absence, he grew suspicious and confronted him. And just like Gaku, Shiro confessed to his crime. He admitted to taking the game along with other Zelda-related items, including a dedicated Pro Controller, amiibo figures, and Amazon's bonus spoon. He also revealed, "If I hadn't been caught, I was planning to just quit my job." Now, the subcontractor didn't want the story to get out, fearing it could damage the company's reputation with Amazon and cost them future contracts. And so in the end, the thefts were never reported to the authorities. Both Gaku and Shiro were simply fired and required to return the unopened items and compensate the company for anything they had opened or sold. The next case though shows how quickly admiration for a game can turn into outrage when its perfect reputation is questioned.
My language, I'm not going to butcher my vocabulary. I'm going to discuss subject matter with the tone that subject matter warrants.
Before Jim Sterling became an independent game critic, he'd worked as a reviewer for major video game publications, most notably Destructoid and The Escapist, two of the widely read game publications of the 2000s and 2010s. But then, after a negative review of Assassin's Creed Unity was pulled by The Escapist because they didn't want to lose advertising funds from the publisher, Jim decided that it was time to step out on his own. So he took the show he had been developing for The Escapist and moved it to his own website, and named it The Jimquisition. He also started a YouTube series with the same name, and since he was already a pretty big name in the gaming community, his personal brand took off in no time. Among the things Jim did differently with his brand was to remove developer influence completely. So he funded the Jimquisition through Patreon, a platform where audiences support creators through monthly subscriptions. He was on a mission to produce unfiltered gaming content regardless of how harsh or controversial it was, and was not going to let developer ties get in his way. Now, Jim had always been known for unfiltered reviews, and this had gotten him into trouble with fans and publishers on multiple occasions. In March 2016, he was sued by Digital Homicide Studios for a negative review of their first ever game release, The Slaughtering Grounds. They accused him of assault, libel, and slander, and demanded $10 million in damages. But the amount was raised to $50 million after Jim went on to publicly accuse them of deleting negative user positive reviews on Steam and banning players who criticized the game. Now the lawsuit dragged on for nearly a year and was dismissed in late February of 2017. Now barely 1 month after he got out of the $15 million lawsuit, Jim posted another game review. This time around, he published a review of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now a quick heads up, I'll be referring to Breath of the Wild just as Zelda from here on out. Now after its release, Zelda sat pretty at a 98 Metacritic score, putting it among the highest rated games of all time. Metacritic had combined the ratings of registered game critics to come up with a score, and so far, critics from top outlets had given it positive ratings. It was tagged a landmark game by publications, and fans claimed that it might be the best open world game they'd ever played. But then on March 17, 2017, 9 days after its release, when most outlets had already published their reviews, 2 websites published reviews of Zelda, the reviews by the Jimquisition and Slant magazine, and they threw some hardcore Zelda fans into a fit of rage. Jim's review dropped first, and since he also had more eyes on him than Jed Pressgrove, the reviewer of Slant magazine, his review spread like wildfire throughout the Zelda fandom. In his 3,000 word review, Jim broke down what he liked and disliked about the game, and then ended with,
"Truly, I wish I could say I understood what all the critics were raving about in their onslaught of 10 out of 10 reviews. But I don't. I see too many things getting in the way of their brilliance, too much repetitive busy work, and full-on moves for me to say that this is even close to my favorite Zelda game, much less in the top 5.
But what angered fans the most about his review wasn't his words, but the rating at the very end. He'd given the game a 7 out of 10, and that, along with the rating of 6 by Slant magazine and another rating of 6 published the next day by Gamer.no, moved Zelda from a rating of 98 to 97, pushing it further down the Metacritic's list of best games of all time. For context, every review submitted to Metacritic's review page was from vetted professional game critics. The reviews were divided into 3 categories: positive, mixed, and negative reviews. Now Zelda didn't get any negative reviews, but ratings that fell between 50 and 74 counted as mixed reviews, giving Zelda 3 mixed reviews, hence the reduced ranking. So although a 7 in Jim's personal rating metric meant good, the fans weren't impressed, and shortly after the review went live, they took over his comment section.
"Super stupid review. Would use fire to burn it. The game clearly deserves nothing less than a 9 out of 10, and all problems you talked about are just barely noticeable stuff that don't make the game any worse."
Another comment said,
"You are truly a stupid sack of way to bring the entire score down on the metagame rankings by over 1%. What a con man."
And the comments didn't end in the comment section of this post. The fans took it to the forums as well. They came up with different conspiracies about why Jim gave the game a mixed rating. Some claimed that he intentionally waited until other platforms had posted their positive reviews so he could bring the rating down with his mixed review.
What an absolute insult to a complete masterpiece. Right off. Even has the audacity to make sure all the 10 out of 10s are out before publishing a 7, knowing full well it would generate interest. Clickbait.
Now there were multiple comments claiming that he gave the game a rating of 7 just for the attention it would bring him. Like this comment that said,
"This man is playing to find flaws in the game, rather than playing to find the joy in it. Why? Because a 7 out of 10 on a game, grabs more attention than a 9 out of 10.
Now fans brought up his long-running beef with Nintendo. It was no secret to anyone who followed Jim's content that he had a difficult relationship with Nintendo, especially because how they used YouTube's content ID system to claim advertising revenue on any video that used footage from their games, even if it was a review video. He even made a video months earlier where he said that he didn't consider pirating Nintendo games a crime, given how the company treats its creators. So fans claimed that he'd given Zelda a mixed rating as revenge against Nintendo.
An obvious publicity stunt and revenge attempt at Nintendo, especially since he criticized Zelda for everything he gave HCD a 9.5 for.
They also brought up his friendship with Jed Pressgrove, the reviewer for Slant magazine, and claimed that the two of them had coordinated to hold back their mixed reviews until all the other major positive reviews were already in, making it impossible for the game to climb back up. But this comment explains why many fans felt the review was unfair.
"I think you missed the modern reviewer's score range. Most reviewers give every major release a 9 or above. Almost all give them an 8 or above. 7 means they think it's horse."
Now the same commenter went on to say,
Him and his close friend Slant magazine made the game slip from 98 to 97, which no longer makes it tied for the best rated game.
Now shortly after the review went live, Jim tweeted,
"Support is telling me the site's being DDoSed again. I guess Zelda hypesters couldn't let No Man's Sky CLODs outdo them."
Now a DDoS attack, short for distributed denial of service, is when a website is deliberately flooded with traffic to knock it offline. And the second part of the tweet was referencing a similar attack his site had suffered in 2016 after a review of No Man's Sky. Now when word of the DDoS got out, some fans weren't sympathetic. They left comments like,
"Meh, he deserves it. It's obviously a ploy to garner clicks and additional site revenue. Plus, he's fat, and apparently he's a IRL. He lets his wife sleep with other men. What a disgusting man.
And in response to this comment, another fan wrote,
I agree that he deserves it, especially since he is blaming Zelda hipsters in his tweet. That would suggest that he just has something against Nintendo. Face it, if you've played the game, a 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 is objectively wrong on almost every level. And this guy deserves what he got, not because of his review, but for blaming the DDoS attack on Zelda fans.
But the harassment didn't end there. Jim reported that he'd gotten death threats, and there were comments like,
"Go leave this earth, you SJW piece of shit. This world would be better off without like you."
And then there were polls demanding that people vote for Jim to be punished in several ways. A particular straw poll said,
"Should the fat SJW, deceitful, attention-seeking, Japanophobic, Rush-infested that is Jim Sterling, be lynched by a mob of rightful believers in Zelda?"
Now, a few days after the review went live, Jim posted a response video on his YouTube channel titled Weapon Durability, Fanbase Fragility. He had originally planned to do a video breaking down both the strengths and weaknesses of the game, but given everything that had happened, he decided to make it a response video. In the video, Jim went straight for the fans, reading their comments back to them and questioning the actual enjoyment of the game.
If your game is so great, if Breath of the Wild is really the best game of all time, why are you not playing it? Why is crying about a review on the internet by a stranger the more compelling use of your time?
And he ended the video by saying,
Because right now you're all being so precious, so fragile, that you should all be swords in Hyrule.
Now, in the end, Jim's Patreon funding was unaffected. The review stayed on Metacritic, and Zelda's rating still remains at 97 to this day. Now, while Jim could push back against the backlash, the next case moves into the real world, where a simple moment in public unexpectedly got the attention of the police.
Even though Bray may have had innocent intentions, the item could still be perceived as a weapon and cause fear among the public.
Anthony Bray had spent most of his life in Nuneaton, a small town in Warwickshire, England, where he developed a reputation for always getting in trouble with the law. His record stretched back to 1989, when he was convicted of domestic burglary at just 13. Through the 1990s, he cycled through court appearances on charges ranging from theft to commercial break-ins, and by 2001, he was serving 18 months for burglary, a sentence followed just 2 years later by another 18 months for the same offense. Now, between 2004 and 2009, he picked up several more prison sentences, and each time he was released, he would simply return to his life of crime. Then in 2013, he walked into an unlocked house on Arbery Road. Anthony had a method he followed during house break-ins. He'd slip into unlocked homes in the early evening, and if he was caught inside, he'd simply claim he was looking for someone he knew. That evening, the homeowner heard his back door open, assumed it was his wife, and went to check, only to find Anthony standing in his utility room. And when the homeowner confronted him and asked what he was doing there, he just stood there before claiming that he was looking for a man named Jamie and that he had the wrong house. And he then simply quietly walked out. Shortly after, a neighbor spotted him in the streets, recognized him from a previous incident, and flagged down a passing police car. And Anthony was later found hiding in a nearby alleyway. He was arrested and sentenced to 4 years in prison for burglary. Now, his next brush with the law wouldn't be until June 8, 2024. Anthony was casually walking down Queens Road, openly carrying what looked like a sheathed blade, when CCTV operators spotted him, and they alerted officers in the area. And unaware of this, Anthony continued down the street, still holding the item. Now, he walked straight toward where the officers were stationed, and was arrested on the spot again. Now, under UK law, carrying a knife or bladed item with a blade longer than 3 inches in public is a criminal offense, and the West Midlands, where Nuneaton is located, took this particularly serious because of the region's long history of knife crime and blade-related deaths. So when it came to bladed items in public, Nuneaton police didn't take any chances. But here's the thing, Anthony wasn't carrying an actual knife. What he had in his hands was a miniature replica of the Master Sword from The Legend of Zelda. It had a 6-inch blade that was sheathed at the time of his arrest but could be released at the press of a button. Now, when questioned by the police, Anthony insisted that he hadn't intended to hurt anybody with the replica sword and simply bought it online as a fidget toy to keep his hands busy. And based on the police report, officers tried to explain to Bray that,
despite its intended purpose, it was in fact a sharply pointed item which could be used as a weapon and might put others in fear of it being used against them.
Now, Anthony finally admitted that carrying the sheathed sword around in public might seem threatening to passerby, but he insisted that he wouldn't have used it as a weapon. His intent didn't matter at this point though, because under UK law, you cannot carry a bladed item in public regardless of what it looks like or what it was intended for. There are very few exceptions to this rule, and Anthony didn't qualify for any of them, so he was charged and taken to court. On June 28, 20 days after his arrest, Anthony was sentenced to 4 months in prison and ordered to pay a fine of £154. In an interview, a sergeant from the Patrol Investigations Unit in charge of Anthony's case defended his arrest by saying,
"We take a zero tolerance to bladed articles in public, and Bray has fallen afoul of this."
He added,
"It is possible to find fidget toys that aren't 6-inch blades. It is possible not to walk down the street holding them out in front of you. and with a bit more self-awareness, Bray could have avoided contact with us completely.
Unlike Anthony's case, where the law was broken unknowingly, the next person knew exactly what he was doing and made it clear he had no intention of stopping.
A man from Colorado has found himself in the legal crosshairs of a major video game company. Nintendo is suing him for potentially millions of dollars.
Jesse Keegan was a 38-year-old streamer who went by the name Every Game Guru. Jesse didn't just stream gameplay. He played pirated games, often with his face visible on camera, and directed his viewers to places where they could download pirated game files, even linking to emulator sites like Yuzu and Ujinx, which let people run the games on a PC. Now, he also streamed pre-release titles, which are basically leaked copies of unreleased games, days, sometimes even weeks before their official launch. Now, among the pre-release titles he streamed were some of Nintendo's biggest games, including The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom, Mario and Luigi Brothership, and Super Mario Party Jamboree. Now, within the gaming community, Nintendo is well known for aggressively protecting its intellectual property, so Jesse's videos were constantly getting copyright takedowns. His channels were being reported across multiple platforms, and he even got cease and desist letters from Nintendo. Now, when Nintendo hit one of his YouTube videos with a copyright takedown in November of 2023, Jesse fought back, arguing it was corporate overreach and that his streams were protected by fair use, since he wasn't even using Nintendo's hardware or code. YouTube rejected his request though, but Jesse kept posting. After several clashes with Nintendo, Jesse's YouTube channel would eventually get demonetized, but that didn't stop him either. He simply uploaded his Cash App handle so his fans could support his streams and kept posting videos. He posted gameplay streams on over 5 platforms, including Twitch, YouTube, Loco, and Kick. So whenever one channel got hit with a takedown or suspension, he just redirected his viewers to a different platform. He would even go as far as posting the access link to these unreleased games on his social media accounts, tagging them as rewards for his followers, and it seemed the more his channel got sanctioned, the more determined he was to give his viewers access to pre-released Switch games. In one post he said,
"Love you all, capitalism is cancelled. My channel's being deleted for sharing gameplay videos. This is your reward."
By October 2024, Jesse's channel had been hit with multiple copyright takedown notices. So on October 17th, he sent an email to Nintendo's legal team where he boasted that
He will actively help people find newer and updated copies of Ujinx and Yuzu, as well as help people play Nintendo Switch games on their PC with no need to buy Nintendo's hardware.
And then on October 24th, he took it a step further, titling his next email,
"I have 1,000 burner channels.
and the body of the email has just 6 words.
We can do this all day."
Now, Nintendo didn't respond to Jesse's messages, but on November 6, 2024, they filed a lawsuit against him, accusing him of repeatedly streaming pirated pre-released games and, in their words,
giving his viewers everything they need to pirate as many games as they wish.
The suit also claimed that he'd posted online that he wanted to
Help anyone and everyone who wants to get Nintendo games for free, or who needs help installing and setting up Nintendo Switch emulators that let you play Nintendo Switch games for free.
Even after the case was filed, Jesse continued streaming. At this point, most of his known channels had been taken down, including his YouTube channel, which had grown to about 1,730 subscribers. In the lawsuit, Nintendo cited US copyright law, which allows for up to $150,000 in damages per violation, and they were accusing him of 50 separate counts. That meant Jesse was facing a suit that could potentially lead to a $7.5 million damages claim. Shortly after the case was filed, a 9 News reporter reached out to Jesse via his livestream's chat room.
Oh, okay, 9 News, yeah. Yeah, okay, I see that.
And when he asked if he knew about the lawsuit, he responded,
"No, I haven't been served."
The conversation was soon taken off stream, and then Jesse opened up to the reporter saying,
"I still haven't been served with a lawsuit, so I don't think it's smart to do any interviews. But my plan is to file for bankruptcy and or let them get a default judgment to avoid this setting a precedent for emulating, streaming, etc."
On November 21st, 2024, 15 days after the lawsuit was filed, Jesse sent a message to Nintendo via Facebook.
"Should have done more research on me. You might run a corporation, I run the streets."
Jesse would then begin dodging attempts to deliver the legal documents that would officially notify him of the case, ignoring calls from process servers, and he was nowhere to be found at the addresses on record. And after weeks of trying to reach him without success, the court stepped in. In mid-December 2024, the judge approved alternate methods of service, so legal notices were sent via email and copies of the lawsuit were delivered to Jesse's mother, his grandmother, and his partner. But despite all these, Jesse still didn't respond. By March 2025, Jesse still hadn't accepted the lawsuit, so Nintendo decided they weren't going to wait any longer. They moved for a default judgment, which meant the court could make a final decision without him. In other words, he wouldn't get to plead his case, leaving the outcome in the hands of the court and Nintendo's legal team. In the end, the court approved the settlement requested by Nintendo, and even though they had sued him for 50 counts of copyright infringement and could have legally demanded millions, they sought only $10,000 for a single title, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. They also demanded that Jesse pay $500 each for 15 separate violations of Nintendo's anti-privacy protections, bringing the total to $17,500. The ruling also barred Jesse from pirating or streaming Nintendo games, bringing an end to his Switch streaming career. As for whether Jesse ever paid up, there has been no public reporting on that since the judgment. This next case, on the other hand, started as just a casting rumor that quickly turned into an online war that spiraled completely out of control.
This is what you don't want to have happen. This is what every Hollywood casting director, every Hollywood producer, investor has nightmares about.
In 2022, a fan uploaded a fan edit of Euphoria actress Hunter Schafer as Princess Zelda. The clip gained traction quickly, with viewers pointing to how closely she resembled the character, and it spread far enough that Hunter was eventually asked about it in an E! Entertainment interview, where she responded that it would be cool to take on the role.
Have you seen a TikTok go viral about a fan wanting you to play Zelda in a live-action movie? Is that something you'd be interested in, or a role you would like to pursue?
I mean, yeah, that would be cool. Like an elf? Yeah.
It was just a fan edit at the time, and there was no indication Nintendo would ever bring Zelda to the big screen. But that changed in November 2023 when Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of the Zelda franchise, announced via Nintendo's official X account that a live-action Legend of Zelda film was officially in development. Now, nothing was said about the release date or the cast, but a good number of fans couldn't wait and flooded the comments with excitement. However, not everyone was thrilled. One user commented,
"Please, no, oh god, I'm begging you, why does it have to be live action? Please do not make this movie."
Others were more interested in sharing their casting ideas. One fan suggested that Ryan Gosling be cast as Link, another suggested Machine Gun Kelly for the same role. Other fans shared their vision of how they wanted the movie to look and feel. Now, speculation flew around about who would be cast and how the film would turn out. But after the initial excitement, things went fairly quiet. But that changed on May 29, 2025, well over a year after Nintendo's announcement, when Screen Time, an entertainment news page, posted a tweet that sent the entire Zelda fandom into a frenzy. The page republished a claim from industry insider Daniel Richman, known for sharing casting scoops. The post read,
"Hunter Schafer is reportedly being eyed to play Princess Zelda in the live-action Legend of Zelda film."
And Hunter Schafer was no stranger to the spotlight. She made her first big break playing Jules in HBO's Euphoria and had since gone on to appear in other major productions, including The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and she was also a well-known LGBTQ activist and also a transgender woman. Now, within a short time, the post got over 80 million views. News of her potential casting sparked a fierce war of words among Zelda fans. On one side were those who believed Hunter was the perfect fit for the role, and on the other were fans who believed that casting her as Zelda was a sure way to ruin the film and cause it to flop. Now, Hunter's fans posted and reacted to side-by-side pictures of her and Zelda, with captions like,
"When a trans woman looks closer to Zelda than an actual woman. Good lord, she looks the part more than anyone I can think of."
Another posted,
"Imagine being so bigoted you can't see that as the most perfect casting for Princess Zelda just because you're a transphobe."
And while the fans were going at it on X, questions were being raised about where the rumor had actually come from. Some outlets reported that the speculation had originated from a PR company linked to Hunter's team, raising questions about whether Hunter had ever truly been considered for the role. Meanwhile, Daniel Richman, the original source of the scoop, had to step in and correct a news outlet that had taken his words too far. The outlet had reported that Hunter Schafer is in talks to play Princess Zelda, but that was not what Richman actually said, so he responded directly.
"No one said in talks. If you're going to report what I said, at least get it right."
Real or not, the rumor had already taken on a life of its own at this point, but Nintendo had not confirmed Hunter as Zelda, so both groups still had an equal chance of getting their wish fulfilled. However, that changed on July 16, 2025, when Shigeru sent a message via Nintendo's official X account again, announcing the actors who would be playing Link and Zelda in the movie, slated for release in May 2027. Turns out Zelda would be played by Bo Braggerson and Link by Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, two relatively unknown British actors. Now, Hunter's supporters did not take the news well. They flooded the comments promising to boycott the movie, with one user writing,
"They could have made it epic. They had Hunter Schafer."
Another posted,
"Hunter deserved the role, not some random girl who's been in films no one's ever heard of."
Now, for some of Hunter's supporters, this wasn't just about a fan casting falling through. They believed Nintendo had passed her over because she was transgender, while others in the same camp were more understanding, pointing out that at 26, Hunter may have been simply too old for what Nintendo was looking for from the start. For the other side of the fanbase, the announcement was exactly what they'd been hoping for, and they took it to X to celebrate. But the discourse got even worse when a user with the display name Rosaria's Middle Finger took things a step further, posting,
"Hunter should be allowed to kill Miyamoto."
And for many, this had crossed a line that no casting in this agreement could justify. Fans were enraged, with some arguing that those pushing for Hunter's casting were never really Zelda fans to begin with. but people who simply wanted to get a high-profile casting out of the franchise. But Rosaria's middle finger wasn't done. Seeing the angry reactions pouring in, the user posted again.
Hunter should also be allowed to kill everyone in the replies to this.
Now shortly after the post gained widespread attention, they were deleted, and the account behind them disappeared from Max completely. What unfolds in this next case though sounds like a scene right out of a Zelda live-action movie.
Swords and flower pots, it sounds nuts. He's...
Most people who own a replica sword from The Legend of Zelda keep it as a collector's item or a cosplay prop. Eugene Thompson was like that as well, until one phone call changed everything. Eugene lived in Katy, Texas with his girlfriend, Kimberly, who at the time was still legally married to her husband, John. Although they'd been separated for some time, the two remained on good terms. On the evening of March 1st, 2014, Eugene got into an argument with Kimberly, and for reasons that were never publicly reported, sometime during or after the argument, Kimberly called John. Shortly after the call, John arrived at the residence. Kimberly opened the front door to let him in, and he immediately charged towards Eugene. Eugene ran to the back bedroom, shouting for John to leave the house, but John didn't leave. Instead, he followed him down the hallway.
And he was just coming down that hall at me while I was yelling, "Go away, you don't live here."
Hearing John approach, Eugene went to his closet and grabbed one of his replica swords, which happened to be the Master Sword from The Legend of Zelda. And still yelling for John to leave, he held the sword in a defensive stance and positioned himself in the doorway.
And I heard him heading back to the bedroom where I was, and so I jumped in the closet and I grabbed one of my replica swords and I pulled it out and I stood in the doorway.
Even with the replica sword in Eugene's hands, John kept advancing until he walked straight into the pointed blade of the sword.
And he just walked right into the point of the sword. I don't know if he thought it was a toy.
Eugene had bought the sword because of how closely it resembled the actual Master Sword.
So I got it because it's a good replica and it looks nice and it just so happens to be pointed and bladed.
And true to its form, it pierced right through John's skin. Afterward, Eugene managed to force John out of the house and locked the door securely to keep him from getting back inside. Despite his injury, John didn't give up though. He went back to the locked front door and started hammering on it until he eventually broke back into the house. And once inside, he went after Eugene once again. This time around, immediately he noticed that Eugene was still holding the sword, and he tried to take it from him, but Eugene wouldn't let go. So the two men got into a scuffle, and while they struggled for possession of the sword, John was stabbed in his chest and leg. Injured and unable to take the sword from Eugene, he stormed out of the house, grabbed a flower pot, ran back in, and smashed it on Eugene's head. Describing the moment in an interview, Eugene said,
"It dinged me on the head, and all of a sudden I had blood pouring down my face."
Shortly afterward, deputies from the sheriff's office arrived at the scene, following reports of the disturbance. Both men were injured and bleeding. John was rushed to the Memorial Hermann Hospital in serious condition, while Eugene was taken to a different hospital to have the gash on his head stitched. Kimberly, on the other hand, was unharmed. Now, following the incident, both men refused to press charges, and Eugene later said,
"I'm just trying to figure out what to do from here. I have to find a new place to live."
Now, the next case also begins with a fight nobody planned for, but this time around, there were consequences.
Before midnight, another stabbing, this one between roommates. This one happened just before midnight.
In the early hours of Friday, January 26, 2018, police received a call about a disturbance among roommates at an apartment on East 42nd Avenue, not far from the University of Alaska, Anchorage campus. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the apartment in disarray. A broken television was on the floor, a bloody napkin lay nearby, a knife sat on a table next to the door, and on the floor beside it was a bent Legend of Zelda replica sword. The apartment was home to multiple people, and among them was 22-year-old Jeremy Tasru, his fiancée, and their infant child. Also present that night were 4 other roommates, identified as TP, Sheldon, Maupin, and Booth. A few minutes before the police were called, a confrontation broke out between TP and Maupin. Things got so heated that TP grabbed Maupin and flipped her onto the armrest of a chair. And seeing what was going on, Sheldon quickly stepped in and tried to push TP away from Maupin. But TP wouldn't budge. Instead, he punched Sheldon back. Jeremy, who was with his fiancée and their baby while all of this was going on, tried to step in to stop TP from hurting anyone further. But again, TP threw a punch, and this time it wasn't just aimed at Jeremy, but his fiancée as well, who at the time was still holding their infant. The confrontation shifted with TP now facing off against Jeremy, Maupin, and Sheldon. Noticing the shift, Jeremy's fiancée handed their baby to Booth and asked him to call the police. And at this point, it was already past midnight, and the fight between Jeremy and TP showed no signs of stopping. Jeremy then reached up and grabbed a Legend of Zelda replica sword that was mounted on the wall. Initially, he used the sheathed sword to hit TP, but TP wouldn't back down, so Jeremy unsheathed the sword and went at TP with the blade itself. Now the fight took a turn for the worse when Jeremy dropped the sword, which had gotten bent from the fight, and ran to the kitchen to grab an actual knife. Now even with the knife in Jeremy's hand, TP came at him anyway, and Jeremy struck him multiple times. And when the police arrived at the residence, TP was nowhere to be found. Now he had run out of the apartment after getting stabbed, and was later found by officers lying on a bike trail close to the University of Alaska Anchorage campus, bleeding from a puncture wound on the left side of his ribs. Now TP was rushed to the Alaska Native Medical Center for treatment, and Jeremy was taken into custody and later charged with 4th-degree assault and reckless endangerment. Now what happened after the charges were filed in 2018 isn't clearly documented in public records. After his arrest, Jeremy was brought before a judge and released while the case moved through the court system. And after that, there were no follow-up reports, no public trial coverage, and no official update confirming the outcome of Jeremy's first ever criminal charge. Now while this incident happened in the heat of the moment, the next case follows someone who looked the FBI in the eye, made them a promise, and went on to break it repeatedly.
Bro, he got contacted by the FBI and he thought it was a good idea to go... What? Bro, you're already on their list.
In 2015, Nintendo launched a developer portal, a restricted platform that provided developers with the internal tools and resources needed to create Nintendo games. 1 year after its launch, Ryan Hernandez, a 17-year-old Nintendo enthusiast, applied and was granted access to the portal. Before joining the platform, Ryan had signed a non-disclosure agreement, promising to never disclose or distribute any of the information he saw. But shortly after he joined, confidential development details started showing up online. You see, Ryan enjoyed exploring the back end of video games, but he loved sharing details of his life on social media even more. He posted regularly on Twitter and ran a Discord server where he shared confidential files from the developer portal. And shortly after the leak, Nintendo was able to link Ryan's Twitter profile to his account on their developer portal, making it clear where the data actually had come from. So Nintendo's representatives reached out to Ryan and his parents, since he was still a minor at the time, demanding that he stop posting Nintendo's data online. They also withdrew his access to the developer portal. But just 1 month after agreeing to stay clear of Nintendo's data, Ryan partnered with another hacker who also had his eyes on Nintendo's confidential data. We'll be calling his partner Steve. Since Ryan could no longer freely access the developer portal, they needed another way in, so they posted a fake message on a Nintendo forum, pretending to be a developer who needed technical support. Now the message had a link in it, and when a Nintendo employee clicked that link, they were taken to a fake website that directly stole their login details. And using those stolen details, Ryan and Steve were able to log into the developer portal as that employee. And from there, they worked their way up until they had full admin access. And once they had full access to the portal, they started downloading Nintendo's internal data, including information on a highly anticipated Nintendo Switch console. While Steve chose to remain anonymous, Ryan took to Twitter to boast about his achievement after the information was leaked to the public. After the attack, Nintendo launched an internal investigation and soon traced the stolen data to a Twitter account with the username @RyanRocks562. Through his Twitter account, they also discovered his Discord server, Ryan's Underground Hideout, under the username RyanRocks462. They were able to further link the breach through his IP address, which matched the one from his time on the developer portal. And since Nintendo already had that IP on file from his previous violation, they were able to tie the breach directly to him. They then passed all the information they'd gathered to the FBI. In October 2017, FBI agents paid a visit to Ryan's family home, and there they had a sit-down interview with Ryan and his parents. And when asked about the attack on Nintendo's server, Ryan admitted that he was the culprit. Then the FBI informed Ryan on the legal consequences of what he'd done, and he confirmed that he understood and promised to leave Nintendo alone. Now after getting his word, the FBI agents left without arresting him, because he was still again a minor at the time and had no prior criminal record. But after the visit, Ryan shared what had happened on his Discord server, where he and another member with the username Ardinda made light of the situation. In their exchange, Ryan wrote,
"It's okay, the FBI came to my house before. They can say hello, though that was for Nintendo."
Ardinda responded,
"They will say, hello fellow Splatoon and Splatoon 2 modder Ryan West. We have some reports that you are keeping 37 children against their will in your basement. Is that correct?"
Ryan replied,
"I will say yes, but you will lose the case just like last time. And as they leave, you call them the N-word."
He also posted a meme on Twitter showing SpongeBob wearing an FBI cap and tagged Nintendo's official account with a single word. Although Ryan joked about the FBI visit, he still decided to lay low for a while. But by June 2018, he was back inside Nintendo's server, this time working his way through multiple server groups one after the other. And just like before, he was doing it all from the same IP address. And whenever he got new information, he shared it on Discord. On one occasion, he bragged to his community members saying,
2 more terabytes and I'll have all of Nintendo's CDN,
referring to their content delivery network, the system Nintendo used to distribute games and updates digitally. Now Ryan wasn't just hacking alone, he ran a whole community around it. He collaborated with members on how to break into servers, shared hacking tips, and helped people access pirated Nintendo games, and would even ask community members to store stolen files when he ran out of space. Now he was so comfortable on the server that he would actually share personal details there as well. For instance, when his father changed their service provider, he complained about it online and then added his new IP address to keep his community members updated. Now by 2019, he had hacked into Nintendo servers across various states in the US and even some countries outside the US. And throughout all of this, he carried out his attacks using multiple email accounts spread across different providers, all of them variations of Ryan Rocks followed by random numbers, and most registered under his alias, Ryan West. In February of 2019, he posted a screenshot of Nintendo's eShop testing server on Discord and added a message saying,
"Hardly anyone knows about this actually. Server stuff has been my thing for the past 3 to 4 months, and I learned a lot about Nintendo."
Now while Ryan went about stealing Nintendo's internal files, they had noticed his activities since October 2018 and had since handed the details of their new findings over to the FBI again. On June 11, 2019, Ryan attended E3, an annual gaming expo held in Los Angeles, where the biggest names in the industry gathered to showcase upcoming games and hardware he'd been attending for years. And this time around, he walked up to a Nintendo kiosk at the event and struck up a conversation with a Nintendo representative. He asked detailed questions about Nintendo's server infrastructure and data protection measures, information he needed for his ongoing hacking efforts against the company. Now Ryan recorded the entire conversation on his phone and then posted it on social media. And 8 days later, the FBI showed up at his home with a search warrant this time. During the search, they recovered his devices and a hard drive that contained thousands of Nintendo's confidential files. They also found about 669 images and 968 videos of younger people, mostly engaged in explicit activities, all saved in a folder named Bad Stuff. Now Ryan was charged and later pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts of computer fraud and abuse and possession of explicit content involving certain people. Now while the case was still in court, Ryan was released on bond with certain conditions: no electric devices, no gaming systems, and no internet access. He was also forbidden from unauthorized contact or proximity with persons not of age. But shortly after he was sent home, Ryan violated the conditions of his bond, and he didn't do it once or twice. He went back to living his life as though those terms didn't actually exist. He used an unmonitored device to access the internet and remained active on his social media platforms, including Discord. He also remained in contact with a younger person with whom he shared a YouTube channel. After an unknown person reported his activities and provided links to his posts as evidence, a pretrial service officer visited his home to investigate, and when questioned about his social media activity, Ryan and his father both told the officer that there had been no internet use whatsoever, even though records obtained from Discord and his internet service provider told a different story. Not long after that visit, the violations caught up with him. On November 9, 2020, Ryan was arrested at his home in Palmdale, California, after pretrial services determined that he'd been using the internet for months without approval. He later appeared in court by video conference and admitted to violating the conditions of his release. On December 1, 2020, 21-year-old Ryan was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 7 years of supervised release. He was ordered to pay Nintendo $259,323 in restitution for the damage and investigation costs his action had caused. He was also ordered to register as an offender. There have been no public updates on his case since then though, but based on the terms of his sentence, he would now be on supervised release. While Ryan was eventually punished by the law, the next case is far more disturbing, and yet justice never got the chance to run its course.
Pop, 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 pop. I was traumatized. I didn't know what was going on.
I was in shock. I didn't know what to do.
Christina Grimmie was a 22-year-old American singer and internet personality who began her career at 15 by posting song covers on YouTube. Over the course of a few years, she grew her audience to more than 3 million subscribers, competed on the popular talent show The Voice, and released her first and second studio albums in 2013 and 2016 respectively. Christina always maintained an open and friendly relationship with her fans. She often posted interactive videos and updates online, and in addition to YouTube, she had thousands of followers on both Twitter and Facebook. Her approachable nature made fans feel connected to her in ways that went far beyond just listening to her songs. Most of her fans were teenagers and young adults who had fallen in love with her through her musical journey and her brief stint as a host on Disney's web show Power Up. But in the second half of 2015, Christina's talent and charm attracted the attention of a man who was described by most of his acquaintances as socially awkward and quiet. Before discovering Christina, Kevin James Stoibel spent his free time playing video games, particularly World of Warcraft. He struggled to interact with people even at home. He stayed holed up in a dark room with heavy curtains and aluminium foil covering the windows. Kevin lived with his father and brother in a modest suburban home in St. Petersburg, Florida. After dropping dropping out of college and searching endlessly for a job, he was able to find work with Best Buy. Early on, he was moved from one department to another because he wasn't good at interacting with customers. Eventually, he was placed on the Geek Squad team, where he didn't have to interact with people, but instead spent his work hours repairing computers. Soon after discovering Christina, Kevin became fixated on her. He binge-watched all her videos and every post she made on social media. According to Corey Dennington, Kevin's only friend and co-worker, he didn't have any social media accounts of his own, but he somehow stayed up to date on everything Christina posted or that mentioned her. Corey began to notice several changes in Kevin. He went on a vegan diet and lost about 50 pounds. He also whitened his teeth, had LASIK eye surgery, and got a hair transplant. He also started talking about Christina to his colleagues and even told Corey that she was a soulmate. He claimed that even though he'd been an atheist all of his life, she had helped him see the world differently, and that if there was a God, he saw it in her. Christina had always been outspoken about her Christian faith, and by adopting her faith, Kevin was excited to have one more thing in common with her. So far, they both enjoyed playing video games. Christina even had a Twitch profile where she occasionally streamed while gaming, and she was a known fan of The Legend of Zelda. Her YouTube username, ZeldaXLove64, was a clear homage to the series. Kevin had even bragged to his colleagues that he'd played online with her once, although the claim remains unverified, and there's no evidence that Christina even interacted with him online. Corey grew concerned that Kevin was becoming dangerously fixated with Christina, so he brought his concerns to their boss, but no action could be taken because Kevin's behavior didn't affect his work performance. Now, Kevin's colleagues often saw him watching videos of Christina or staring at her pictures and were aware of his fixation on her. They would even tease him about his intense infatuation with a famous singer. His family, on the other hand, knew nothing about it. Whenever Corey pointed out how unlikely it was for them to ever end up together, Kevin would get visibly angry and defensive and would even threaten to end their friendship. He was determined to make it happen and wouldn't entertain comments from naysayers. But then pictures of Christina and Steven Reza, a producer and musician she worked closely with, started circulating online, and to Kevin's dismay, he was rumored to be her boyfriend. Now, he had kept himself for her, going as far as dieting, adopting her religion, and spending thousands of dollars to change his appearance. But there she was, publicly dating someone else. And so on May 25th, 2016, he bought a Glock 26, which he picked up after the 5-day waiting period. But he decided he needed more firepower, and on June 1st, he purchased a Glock 19 from a different gun store, which he picked up 6 days later. On June 5th, he returned items he'd borrowed from Corey, told him he loved them, and said he was tired and ready to ascend. Later that day, he printed a ticket for a concert by the pop band Before You Exit, scheduled for June 10th at the Plaza Live in Orlando, where Christina would be performing as the opening act. And on June 9th, Kevin left his house in a taxi. His father saw him getting into a cab, but didn't imagine that he was taking a 2-hour trip to Orlando. By 1:30 p.m., he arrived at the Courtyard by Marriott in downtown Orlando, just 2 miles from the Plaza Live, where Christina was performing the next day. While checking in, the hotel manager thought it was strange that Kevin had no luggage, but didn't think much of it. On the day of the concert, Kevin strapped himself with the 2 guns he'd purchased, a hunting knife and a fully loaded magazine as he headed to the Plaza Live. Security was more focused on searching bags and confiscating snacks, and didn't pat down attendees. And so once inside, he positioned himself at the very back, standing and watching Christina intently throughout her performance. And after the concert, it was time for Christina's fans to meet her in person. Now, the lobby was filled with excited teenagers and young adults, and while Christina spent one-on-one time with her fans, her older brother Marcus, who was also her guitarist and road manager, was in charge of the merchandise table. Now, Marcus and Christina weren't just siblings, they were best friends, business partners, and he even referred to her as his partner for life, having attended countless meet and greets with her. Marcus immediately noticed Kevin standing among the fans. He found it unusual that someone his age would attend a meet and greet with his sister, especially since most of her fans were much younger. Fans who stood behind Kevin would later recall that he looked nervous and uneasy as he waited in line to meet Christina, and when it was finally Kevin's turn in line, Christina reached out with a welcoming hug, and while she was still smiling at him, Kevin pulled out a gun and shot her 3 times, once in the head and twice in the chest. The lobby, which moments before had been filled with exciting voices, erupted into chaos as people screamed and ran for safety. All but one person immediately fled in the opposite direction of the gunfire. Without hesitation, Marcus ran toward Kevin and tackled him to the ground, preventing him from continuing the attack. In that moment, all he could think about was saving his sister, who lay motionless in a pool of her own blood. Now, while Marcus was focused on protecting Christina, Kevin backed up against the wall, pulled out his second gun and aimed it at his head, and pulled the trigger. By the time first responders arrived at the scene, Kevin was already dead, but Christina still had a pulse, so they rushed her to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead shortly after. Now, when police searched Kevin's hotel room, they found a flyer for a burial service that offered to spread a person's remains around the base of a tree. The same flyer was later found in Kevin's pocket at the scene of the shooting. He also encrypted his phone and removed the hard hard drive from his laptop before leaving home, preventing the police from accessing his files and digital footprint. And while the police were unable to access Kevin's files, a search of Christina's phone and digital records confirmed that she had never had any personal interactions with him. And in the days that followed, a memorial was held in her hometown of New Jersey, where friends, family, and fans gathered to celebrate her life and music. The event drew thousands of mourners, with tributes also pouring in from fellow artists. Speaking at the memorial, her brother, Marcus, said,
"All the rumors are true, that when the gunman came, her arms were open. That's how she treated everyone she knew. Her arms were open for them. So thanks again for coming out, you guys. And I love you, Christina."
In the aftermath, her family launched the Christina Grimmie Foundation in her honor, focused on supporting families affected by gun violence and providing assistance to individuals impacted by breast cancer, a cause she had also supported during her lifetime.